Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I am so happy to have you on the show for so many reasons that we will get into as we progress our chat. But I first wanted to let everybody know that I came across you on Instagram. I'm not sure who followed who first. And I started seeing you in stories and all the work and content that you put out. And I was immediately drawn to your presence and your energy. And I was like, I want to know more about this girl. So I also want to know about the work you do, the hypnotherapy. So I reached out to you and asked if you would be a guest on my podcast, because the funny thing is that I don't typically invite people to be on my podcast. They reach out to me. So I just want to say welcome. I am so blessed and happy that you're here. And I just can't wait to dive into this topic.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And especially hearing that you don't tend to reach out to people. I feel honored. Thank you.
Yeah. So I just wanted to jump right in and talk about your path to becoming a hypnotherapy practitioner. Is that the right verbiage, first of all? A hypnotherapist?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about how you got started, how this whole thing unraveled for you.
Well, okay. So I spent most of my young adult life not knowing what I was supposed to do with my life and not in fulfilling careers, not even fulfilling my potential. And I was definitely collecting trauma. And then I got to 40 and I had enough. I recognized that I was the common denominator. And even though I didn't know how I was doing this to myself, I really wanted to get out. And so I thought of traditional therapy. So I spent a year in therapy, and out of that year, there were about 2 golden nuggets. And I really, even at that point in my life, didn't know that I could advocate for myself and ask for what I needed, but I didn't get what I needed from therapy, traditional therapy. Aside though, I was reading self-development books, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, and I did develop a routine for myself, but I didn't connect to that routine. I just knew to keep doing certain things because it kept me from the depths of despair. It did not elevate me past it, but at least I wasn't crying every night. So I did have a huge mass of sadness. It felt like it resided in my chest, and I couldn't feel anything else, only sadness. So in the meantime, I started my Instagram account because I wanted to be able to talk about the things that I learned, but the people that I had in my circle were basically my family, and they weren't interested, and that's okay. That's the path that they were on at that time.
Same.
But but that wasn't enough for me, So I thought, if I develop an opportunity to connect, I'll connect to the people who are going to make me feel heard and seen. And so I watched a video. It was a YouTube video. It was a meditation video. And I was listening to guided meditation videos because I just needed something to drown out the painful thoughts, the negative thoughts, the constant, ruminating thoughts. And I came across a Marissa Peer video, which the YouTube algorithm basically gave me, and I was able to visualize. And when you cannot connect to anything but pain,
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to see color,
Yeah.
So to visualize, couldn't do that. My brain was only, manufacturing hurt at that time. So listening to her, though, I was actually able to visualize what it was that she was trying to get me to see in my mind's eye. And I recognized, like, she's powerful, So I did also the algorithm invited me to one of her evergreen courses, which I accepted, which then filtered me into a rapid transformational therapy appointment. So I went to her website to book it, and she had a catalog of rapid transformational therapists across the United States. And I live in Louisville, Kentucky. There was no one in Louisville, Kentucky, but there was someone in Nashville, Tennessee. And so I booked my appointment with her. And after I went through that appointment, I basically closed my eyes hearing it's going to be 2 hours, but opened my eyes like, what? Time to live. I cried the whole time, but I felt seen. She was able to give me words to express what was going on. After I listened to the personalized recording for 21 days, which really was effective for me because it helped me feel like this is what healthy minded people think like. And, they live their life according to a certain set of standards or values, keeping their word to themselves, pushing forward to meet their goals, so I was actually feeling like I could possibly like take off that depression cloak and be among the people who never had those issues in their life, And at day 22, we met again. And I learned that you actually could go through her program and she would teach you her method. And that's when it dawned on me that this was the vehicle to my life's purpose. So I love female empowerment. I love self-esteem. Didn't live it in my life, but for whatever reason, it was one of those messages from God, from the universe, from higher power that kept coming back into my life. And it's almost like, okay, now I see how this is going to happen through hypnotherapy.
Yeah. So you got much relief from it.
So much relief from it. It was what I was looking for because it is very much between you and the hypnotherapist. It's a collaborative, and I needed someone to be able to tell me what was going on in my life cycles because I was in it, and of course I was in it from a wounded place. I was in it from a lack of knowledge, and I had no idea where to start except here, take my mess and tell me what to do with it,
Yes.
So little pieces through that session, she helped me connect how you're feeling this way because this has happened to you. And that was all I needed to get started.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I really like about this story is that, number one, I'm sure there's many people who can relate to that overwhelming sadness and pain that they just, no matter what they do, they can't get past it. And for a lot of people, those turn into addictions of some type because we're trying so hard to get past this pain. Like we try to numb it, but it's always there. We wake up the next day after going on a shopping spree or drinking ourselves a lot or whatever we did, and it's still there. The pain is still there. And in an earlier conversation you and I had talked about, you had said that you were trying to do the daily affirmations and stuff like that, and it felt, why don't you explain that a little bit?
Yes, thank you. So when I started my Instagram account, I knew that I needed to have a positive or optimistic thought process. I had heard things about if you think differently, then your world is going to be different, and that affirmations help you think differently. And actually, I love Louise Hay. I can, through YouTube, was listening to her videos, and when she would speak, things would make sense. When she was not speaking, it was just me and these affirmations. And so when I had started my account, I thought affirmations are the way to go. This is how I'm going to slowly believe what I'm saying, what sinks in. And I started a year's worth of daily, like every day doing daily affirmations. The first year, they just felt like rocks hitting a wall and falling straight down. couldn't connect with it.
Yeah.
It felt like I was just saying words. And sometimes it felt like I was saying lies. And sometimes it felt like I was saying things that would happen for other people in their perfect life, but not in mine.
Yes, I understand that completely. And I love you're talking about the rocks hitting the wall and falling down, like they're not penetrating. I call
Yes.
that's like a click to me. Like I can tell when a new thought, belief, or something really takes root in my body, because there's like this internal click for me. It's not abrupt, like a literal click, but it's like the key hitting the lock. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just, I'm like, oh yeah. And it feels, but I've also been in the position where I know something and it's coming at me. The truth is coming at me and I can't connect with this thing. Like I know, no, this is true, but I
Yeah.
can't get that thing to absorb into,
Yeah.
I do this a lot, touch my chest area a lot. That sounds so bad, but I am, for those on the podcast, I'm waving my hands in front of my heart center, because for me, when I connect in that way, it does go through my heart. I feel it that way. So, but yeah, there's times where I'm like, I can't break through. So just so everybody knows, transparency here, we tried to record this already once, but we had huge technical difficulties. So if I'm remembering things from the last conversation that we just had, and I want to bring that up again. We talked about bringing things out of the subconscious, and you just shed some light on that for us, like why we need to dig into that subconscious, why it's difficult for us to click, and what hypnotherapy does to help us click.
Oh, thank you for asking that. So your mind is recording from the first second that that last little cell that forms your brain. Your mind starts recording in preparation for the outside world. So that means in utero, in your mother's womb, things are happening. And of course, because you can't see and you can't hear, you can feel. But if your mom is unhappy, your brain is recording it. It knows when you leave, it needs you to survive. So anything small, big, personal moments, times when you were scared, times when you were yelled at, times when you fell and hurt yourself, how to talk, how to breathe, how to chew, how to chew gum and walk. It has recorded all of these things in preparation for you for the next time that you run into this situation. So of course, when you're a baby and you're growing up in an environment that you have been prepared for, it's normalized to you. It could be a wonderful environment and you're going to grow up feeling fulfilled and stable, and you're going to reach your goals. Or if you don't, you're going to say, hey, that's okay, I'll get it next time. Just this wonderful thought process. And of course, the world looks beautiful and you succeed. But if you grew up in a household with most people who are human, it was dysfunctional. You just didn't recognize it as dysfunction. And so because we also learn by watching, the people around us are important to our knowledge. And we're not thinking that we're separate from them. We're not thinking that they're just having a bad day. We're thinking when they give us this negative reaction, when all we were doing was being receptive for positive interaction, we take it personally. We think it's us. We think we're the reason why we don't get love, or why we don't get success, or, anything that we wanted to accomplish, whatever it was, whatever age it was at. At any rate, we then go out into the world with these ideas and stories about ourselves, and it keeps manifesting. We attract the people who reminded us subconsciously of the people we grew up with, who had the same beliefs about us, or who triggered the same feelings within us. It's in everything. Everything is actually a relationship. If you think about it, you and whatever else is having a relationship. And so it affects you. And again, if you're not aware that your subconscious was just doing this to help you survive, that it's not necessarily the truth, that you're projecting onto a reality that really isn't so, and that you can change it at any moment in tiny increments if you wake up to the fact that there is an option to change it, And so then hypnotherapy is about exploring that presenting problem. So you're going to the hypnotherapist with this belief about yourself and a desired outcome that is beyond your grasp.
Can
Because
I
most
interrupt
of
real
the,
quick?
yes,
Let's just real quick give an example of like some of the things that people, and of course it's a vast array of things, but just so people know, like, because some people might be thinking now, like, I don't even know what's wrong. I don't know what belief I'm thinking. So what are the type of things that people go to get hypno for? Just
okay,
a few
yes,
things. I mean, this of course does not cover the gamut of what you can go for.
yeah. So smoking, can't give up smoking, or vaping these days. um Overweight, a desire to lose weight, can't stop eating, try diets and fail. Confidence, knowing that if they're more confident, then they probably could deliver a speech or apply for a higher position at work, or maybe go out into the dating world and meet that special someone. If you have no idea like what you want to do with your life, hypnotherapy is an option. Skin disorders like eczema, there's hypnobirthing. So if you want to be able to have a natural childbirth, there are people who experience infertility, and hypnotherapy is actually what helps them release the blocks to then become receptive to the process of fertility, basically.
Right.
So it really
And
is a gift.
fears, just all kinds of fears.
And sometimes you don't even realize it's fear. So with me, I went because I knew something was wrong. I wasn't getting what I needed, but I chose confidence. You know, I wasn't speaking up for myself at work. I had identified that for whatever reason, I kept going to work for women who were hard to please, loving to be in a supportive role where I was needed, but hated to actually do like the work that they asked me to do, because of the position that it made me feel like I was in. And when it came to dating, I kept attracting men who were emotionally unavailable to me, and just this sadness. So, and of course, my life at the time only existed with work and trying to find love. So, hypnotherapy is just, you go with this certain thing that you want to happen. Say you want more money, but you keep spending your money, you know, like, or you think you don't have enough money. Or let's say you have a fear of flying, you know, so it's whatever. If something is not going right for you, then there is 100% chance that something inside of your subconscious is going to be able to tell you why.
Yeah, that's so cool because as you're talking, I'm thinking, ooh, I got a couple more that I could go for, which
Yeah.
they're not things that are ruining my life, but
Yeah.
but I'm like, ooh, I could really undo that thing right there. And I don't think I mentioned this on part 2 of our recording because the first one was a little defunct. Natalie had gifted me with a hypnotherapy session so that I could experience this. And there was just something that I had felt like I'd been struggling with for a while. And I felt like the block, I wasn't getting the click. Intellectually, I knew, but I couldn't get that click that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to be vulnerable and to share aspects of this through this. I say be vulnerable, but it's kind of easy for me because I just say whatever. I just share my stuff. But because I really want people to have a better understanding of what this is all about, because there's a lot of hoopla and a lot of Hollywood wrapped up into what hypnotherapy really truly is. And it's such a fascinating and miraculous modality that I really loved having the experience. I had experienced it in my coaching school because there's people going through the hypnotherapy program, but it was people that were practicing and stuff. So it really, I don't believe it was really a true hypno session as it was with you, which was fascinating. I can't wait to share all about that. but I do want to talk about that is real quick about what hypno really is, because a lot of people picture someone up on a stage hypnotizing somebody and then they're running around acting like a chicken, and they're like, well, I don't want to be out of control. And I know
Yeah.
I could speak to this because I was just in it, but I want to hear it from the practitioner first.
Thank you. So also, before I go into that, you can use hypnotherapy for positive things too. So like you mentioned, things that you just kind of want to clear up. There are athletes who use hypnosis and visualization and to be able to increase their stamina or to be able to get to the physical point that they need to get to. So it's just, the mind is so fascinating.
Who knew?
Yeah.
I'm like,
So
want to drop my pen, drop my mic. I'm like, who knew? This
yeah.
is fascinating. Please continue.
Yeah. So hypnosis itself is just the process of being able to get into a mental brainwave that allows you to be receptive and also calm your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is the critical thinking mind. Your subconscious mind is feeding it thoughts, but your subconscious mind holds, again, everything that has been recorded in your life since before you came out of your mom's womb. So
you just said something that I love the verbiage of, and I want it to sink in. You said the subconscious mind is feeding the conscious mind.
yes, yeah,
I love the wording of that, because yeah, we do things on this autopilot because we are getting fed from these what do you want to call it? Conditioned patterns,
yeah,
Yeah.
programmed
Yeah.
and reinforced by habitual responses. Your conscious mind can only hold 2 or 3 thoughts at one time. And I could tell you to pay attention to the tingling in your ear from sound, and you're only aware of that tingling in your ear whenever I tell you about it. We're going to keep talking. You're going to forget about the tingling in your ear. But if a huge train just rolls by you really quickly and blares their horn, that tingling in your ear is probably going to remind you of a time when maybe you were at the railroad crossing at 5 and your mom said, count the cars in the train, to pass the time. Just all kinds of things, but the process of hypnotherapy is being able to quiet your conscious mind so that we can access your subconscious mind and find out what is going on with present day problem, the reason why you came. And so we can explore it from a more empowered angle, because even though you feel it just like you felt, the mind can't distinguish between what you're thinking about and what you're actually experiencing. And that's why athletes are able to focus on what they want to happen and play it in their mind. And when it comes time, their mind is ready, So the thing is that you want to be able to go back without even trying to, I'm want to say poo-poo away, like the logical side of it, because that's what your conscious mind does. It helps you with logic. But we want that to be quiet so that we can access the emotional memories, because emotion is what drives you. It's energy in motion. So even though you're not consciously aware of what is causing you to do these things, you can recall several times in your life where you felt the same way. And so it's not necessarily we're going to remember 3 times that you did the exact same thing the exact same way. No, it's going to be 3 times that you felt disempowered. You felt like you couldn't do something. You felt like you'd be too embarrassed to try. Whatever it is, someone hurt you when they said something to you in a certain way. We're going to explore those type of memories, and then from there move on to something empowering. Disconnect the belief from the memory, and then that way we can move forward with the belief in who you are in present day, and the past is just the past. The past is just a
Yeah.
story.
Just the past. I love
Yeah.
that. In recording 1.0, you said that it's easier to form a new neural pathway than it is to break up or dismantle an old one. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about that? Really, what a neural pathway is for people that might be hearing that for the first time, and then why that's easier?
So we have neurons in our brain, and they fire and fuse. And so they form a network. And it's more technical than me, but on a very basic level, they form the pathway in your brain. And so let's say you were learning how to eat and you're right-handed, and over time you would grab for the fork and pull it to your mouth. If it hits you in the cheek, then that was not successful. But we know every time it's time to eat, that right hand that you're more dominant in is going to reach for that fork. And then the next time it's going to get closer to your mouth until you have successfully learned how to feed yourself. So you're creating a neural pathway in your brain. And even though you were doing that below the age of 1, I bet when you're 30 and sitting at a restaurant and dinner comes, your right hand reaches for that fork and it's ready to eat. So that pathway is deep and it's strong. Try to grab for the fork with your left hand. That feels weird. That's because it has not wired into your brain to be a left-handed eater at dinner,
That's a great example. Love that.
Yes. So when you come to a hypnotherapy session with a presenting problem, you don't have the answer yet. You don't have the directions yet. All you know is I keep getting the same routine over and over. That rut that I'm stuck in is the rut in your mind. And so literally and figuratively. So whenever you're able to explore whatever it is, dig deep within, the hypnotherapist is able to understand what direction you're coming from, and also co-create essentially what your roadmap moving forward should look like. And they get that through talking to you about what are your goals. So from there, they're able to give you, a personalized recording comes with the experience with me. We call it the Transformational Recording. And so you listen to it for 21 days because on average, it takes 21 days to create a new habit. And that's all this is. We just need habits to form, and for you to keep doing that habit over and over again to then wire into your brain and become the person that you want to be, the person that does these things in order to accomplish that end result. So that's what that recording does. It's so much easier to give it a new pathway than to try to carve that path to the left at a certain point. No, let's just go fresh and create a new one.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Dr. Joe Dispenza, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he has that book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, or however it's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And this is what he's talking about. It's exactly what he's talking about, because we are, he calls it firing and wiring. We're firing and wiring in the same areas of our brain all the time. And all those cells glom together and they keep active. But when we start firing and wiring in a different area of our brain, that starts the new pathway, and pretty soon that becomes the dominant pathway of thinking, which is fascinating. So just for clarity purposes, what Natalie's saying is like, you will have the 2-hour hypnotherapy session, and then afterwards, she, with her beautiful voice, records this about 20 minutes for everybody. Is that what it is? She writes this personalized script for you, and it's to meditation music or whatever you want. And she writes the script for you that you then, after the session, you listen to for 21 days. And the script is so beautiful because it is literally so personalized to your story and to forming the new neural pathway about what this is all about. So I want to dip into the logistics of the session first, because a lot of, as soon as I was done with this, I jumped off the phone, or yeah, we're on Zoom. And I was like, just had to tell people about it. I'm not saying the second, but my daughter called. I'm like, oh, I had a hypnotherapy. And every single person that I mentioned it to, the first thing out of their mouth was, oh, that scares me.
Oh,
I said, why? Let's talk about that. So I know if it scares people, then
yeah.
that's worth exploring, because people think it's so scary. And what I just want to say real quick, being someone, and you've done it too, and you can talk about your experience as well, is that when I did it, you are in control. I could hear, I could react to you. I had an itch on my nose or sneezed or whatever. I remember certain things happening in that moment. So this wasn't like, if there's a fire, you can't get up. You're
Right.
still awake. I don't know how to explain that. How could you, is it a trance? How should we explain that?
See, that's the thing. We do use words like trance, but you're also in a trance whenever you've driven the same path to work and you're thinking about the groceries, the gas, the mileage you have left before you actually have to stop. What am I going to cook for dinner? I have to remember to drop Billy off at the soccer, practice or whatever. And you're not paying attention to the fact that you're not present in a 2,000-pound vehicle. You're able to stop at a stoplight because that's another part of your brain that's controlling that, but you're not really aware. In those moments, you're in hypnosis, you're in a transcendental state. But like you mentioned, Hollywood has taken it and has turned it into something that is a form of entertainment, or maybe like a little mind game to thrill you, in watching this movie. But it's just a relaxed state where you're able to access the brainwave that you actually dip into whenever you're in a certain level of sleep as well.
I had read that it's like right before you fall asleep and right before you wake up.
Yeah.
It's that brainwave state that we're in with that. So if people can just sit there for a minute and say, oh yeah, I could hear someone knock at the door. I could, you're not, someone is not going to tell you to jump off a bridge and you're going to go do it. It's
right.
You're not in that state. It is just a highly relaxed state. And I love that, because it's almost like, for lack of a better word, I'm just being the layman speaking here. It was almost like talking to somebody while I was meditating.
But it's so clear too. Yeah. You're able to think so clearly.
Clear, crystal clear. Yes. It's like there's no cloudiness in your thinking. It's like you ask a question and I could access the answer to that. And I could say, well, here's what it is, without my logical conscious brain trying to talk me out of it, talk me through it. Because even as a coach, I'll notice people will preface things that I ask them with not just the answer, but they'll say, well, I know I'm thinking this because of this. And then they'll try to give me an answer. I'm like, no. And many times I do have people, lay back and take deep breaths to really access the answer, rather than all the story or reason that their brain has concocted around it.
That conscious thinking.
It's fascinating. So does this work for everyone? I mean, is there a criteria that someone might need to have to be suggestible? I don't know if that's the right word.
Yes, thank you. That is the right word, because I'm giving you suggestions, and it's essentially questions, and you're responsive to it. So I would say yes, but it also depends. That's much of life. So people who might have personality disorders, people who have epilepsy, they would definitely want to see someone who is extremely skilled. People who don't believe it's going to work, it's not going to work. It's going to work. You're just not going to let yourself acknowledge.
They're not going to let themselves that. And that's going to be one of my next questions, but we'll get there.
And so it does. And there are different forms of hypnotherapy. There are different forms of hypnosis. The therapy that I practice is rapid transformational therapy, and it's a succession of certain things that happen within that meeting. There are other people who see a hypnotherapist every single week or across several months, and they explore certain things and help them visualize certain things that help to liberate them. But this particular form of therapy is just it's not meant to be long term. And then there's something called conversational hypnosis, where people don't even get walked down a path or stairs. They're still able to access their subconscious mind. They just don't necessarily realize that that's what's going on, because they didn't have the whole ceremonial talk down through meditation, essentially. So it's so vast, hypnosis, hypnotherapy. There's so many different avenues and methods of practice. I'm more than sure that every single person would be able to benefit from it. It just depends who the therapist is and the modality.
Well, when it comes to coaching, the people that are the most successful are the people who are ready and open.
Yes.
So I think it's the same here, is that you were like, are you ready for this? Or I don't remember what question you asked me. And I was like, girl, take me away. Like, I was so ready. Yes, because I trust you, because I understand how these things work as well. I understand the brain and the thing and the accessing and blah, blah, and rewiring and all those things. But I can see how somebody who is used to being very in control in their lives, that they're afraid to let go for even 5 seconds, for even 30 minutes, to just relax enough to try to access these parts of your brain that are hidden.
Yeah.
So that you can release them, because that's really what is happening. And that's what I'm hoping that people are going to get from us chatting about this, is that we all got them. We all have these programs that are running in the back of our brain, telling our front of our brain what to do. And we're doing it. We're functioning on this autopilot, and it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
We can break this pattern. We can break this.
Yes. And psychology, what I was talking about earlier, is called fetal psychology, the being in utero and collecting all of this information. But when we're out and we're in a hypnotic state up until the age of 7, between 7 and 10, we're learning, we're ingesting, but there's something called the self-concept. And so because we don't know that we're separate from our pack, we think we're one, we think we're united. We're like the ray in the sun is still the sun. It's just an extension of the sun. Mm-hmm. And so we don't understand who we are, but people in our family, people who we come across, people who we're with every day, say at school, our teachers, the person at church, maybe the mean old lady across the street, our aunts, our uncles, they're telling us who we are by how they're acting with us. Or sometimes they come out and say, you're stupid, you're a piece of poop, get away from me, you're annoying, or you're dumb. It's a good thing you're pretty because you're not smart. Just all these subconscious things that we're collecting about ourselves. So even without the power of hypnosis, we're still getting this idea of who we are and what exactly like our limits. What are our limits? And we stay in that story. We stay beneath it. Mm-hmm. We don't know that you can excel past it. A lot of times the people in our lives aren't even consciously aware or woke enough to know that that doesn't have to be so. And we're just following the pattern that people told us to follow, and taking it as that's life. Right. That's reality.
There's a conversation you and I had, and I don't think it was in 1.0. I think it was another time, but we talked about there's no new emotion, that, we've all experienced the same things. I can't remember exactly what the context of this was when you and I were chatting about this, but about really that we've all felt rejection. we've all felt not good enough. We've all felt, like we're humans and we're experiencing the same stuff. Can you take that away a little bit?
Yes, but this is the thing. The awareness that comes with healing, the intention behind something, whether it lands with us or whether it doesn't, whether we rebound and we're resilient or we're not. That's the key. We were talking earlier about, oh, I lost it, but basically about how, affirmations not sticking and affirmations seeming to be like basically spiritual bypassing. The thing is that if you're healed, or if you are healing, or if you have a great idea of who you truly are as a person, that stuff goes inside of you and it is the truth. It's no longer BS. So that's the difference between people who feel things and become disempowered by what they're feeling, and the people who feel the same things, but then know how to deal with it and move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel like there's some things that are harder to access for people? Like it will take a couple sessions.
Yes, 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 yes. So I say trauma a lot. And I say trauma because it fits. There's a big T trauma and there's a little t trauma. And the little t traumas could be like death by 1,000 paper cuts. It doesn't matter. Nobody has the right to tell you how to take that in. If it hurt you, if it affected you in a way that is like a thorn in your skin, it's trauma. So the things that are hard to access a lot of times is because we're not ready to access them, or we haven't explored the layers that it is trapped underneath, or our brain has tucked that away from us due to the trauma. We don't realize it, but if our brain thinks it's too hurtful to experience again, it's going to push it aside. And like I was just saying, no one has the right to tell us what's too painful to experience again or not. We know subconsciously. So there are also times too where sometimes we think like, did that really happen? I don't know if that really happened though. And at this point in time, at this point in your life, it doesn't necessarily have to be historical truth. It's just the meaning that you got from it and how it makes you feel and what you're still holding on to about that.
I love that. That's so important because I remember when I lived with my mom after my tsunami and we moved in with my mother, I remember asking her about certain things and her recollection of it was so different than mine. And she never made me wrong. It was just literally the way my brain processed. And I've noticed that with my kids, certain things that happen, I could even come up with something, maybe the death of a dog or something, and how I'm remembering it like this, but they're remembering it like that. Mm-hmm. And at the time, like maybe how traumatic it was for them, but yet as a mother watching them in this situation, it didn't look traumatic. Like they were handling it fine, but they're like, oh my God, Mom, that was the worst day ever. And, and it stuck inside of me. So yeah, this is not about judging ourselves. This is not about having a scale of whose trauma is bigger. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I heard a definition of trauma once, and I'm not going to get it right. First of all, it was a beautiful definition. I wish I would have written it down, but the gist of it is anything that rocked your world. So if it rocked your world, like where I might skate past or be sad for a minute of a death of a dog, or see that that's, just part of life, where somebody else, like it literally rocked their world. Like maybe it was their first death, or maybe, it is the way we're made. We don't get to choose. It's okay that something affected you a certain way.
Exactly.
So you talked about, I'm just curious with this one because I was Googling a little bit before this and I saw this too. And then you brought it up. Is there a difference between hypnosis and hypnotherapy?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. Sorry. So hypnosis is just the act itself. So it's just putting you into the transcendental state. It's just helping you access those certain brain waves that make you more suggestible, more receptive to suggestions.
Okay.
Hypnotherapy is the combination of hypnosis plus different modalities.
Okay.
So when you're driving around and you check out mentally because you're thinking about little Bobby at the soccer field, that's hypnosis. Nothing helpful came from it. You know, no blocks released, no awareness. As a matter of fact, there is no awareness of anything else except for those thoughts that are going on. So that's the difference.
Okay, that makes sense. And you had talked about the presence of other modalities, and in, I think it was 1.0, you mentioned EFT and NLP. Well, EFT I'm familiar with, but let's explain that to everybody else, and NLP, because I honestly have heard NLP said a lot. And I was like, what is that? I'm sure once I hear what the actual definition, I want to go, oh, I know what that is, but I didn't know the formal name of it. So
Yeah.
can you share what that means and how that's combined with how you do your hypnotherapy?
Yes, thank you. So NLP is neuro linguistic programming. And so an example of that would be if you were to remember when you were in third grade and you had a book report, you had to go in front of the class, and you had a stutter or a lisp and everybody laughed at you. And then to this day, you hate public speaking. So NLP, an example would be, that's not me. I'm not in third grade anymore. I am empowered and I can speak slowly and I have note cards now. So that is not me. So it's basically disassociating from a situation by giving yourself a new thought. You're reprogramming your thoughts about a fear, let's say. Okay. And then EFT is emotional freedom technique. And so that is a combination of affirmations, tapping on meridians that are believed to be or proven to be more receptive to energy while affirming yourself, and then also expelling, I guess, the energy through talking out what your thought processes are. And then again, reprogramming your mind. So you could take, I'm afraid of public speaking. And the way that I learned EFT was starting off with the affirmation, tapping on the side of the hand with, even though I'm afraid of public speaking, I still love and accept myself. And then moving through that, they're going to laugh at me. I'm going to forget what I had to say. My lisp is going to come back. And then, like you had told me in a previous conversation, when you get to the point where you're starting to feel like you're feeling a little bit better, like you're releasing some of the anxiety, that anxious energy, then you switch to, I'm going to tell a joke, or I'm going to tell them, I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to say, or I can reach for my notes that I had. I don't have to be a perfect speaker this time, just turning it around. And so with RTT, there's I think like 9 to 11 different tools, depending on what the person needs, that we can implement. And those were just two of them.
Okay. So in our session, did I do NLP? Because we change wording? Because we didn't tap. We didn't.
No, we didn't tap. We did do the it's not me. So we did do a form of NLP. And then we also did the integrating of the child and showing the child where you live now. And so those are forms of disconnecting and then like a top down and then like a re-shifting essentially. And then we also did, even though I didn't have you repeat it, the words that you wanted to hear as a child, you told your inner child those words. And so It's essentially unconditional acceptance. And that's, in my opinion, what EFT is even though I feel this way, I still love and appreciate myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, gosh, you are a font of information. And I just am so loving this conversation. We need to wrap it up, but I want to share my personal experience just so people understand what it's like to work with you. Number one, I'm just going to start out from the top that you fill out a questionnaire and Natalie goes through your questionnaire, and then you meet on Zoom or a phone call, whatever you want to do. I think we did phone call, just ear.
For the questionnaire.
Okay.
Yes.
And she just asks questions to clarify your situation. That in and of itself, I cannot even tell you guys, felt free to me. I felt liberated in that, just that somebody was listening to this crap that I've had stuck inside of me. And so I even told you that, I think after our conversation, I said, I feel better. Just this conversation feels better to me. Like I felt a release from that. She's a great space holder. As you can tell, she's had a very pleasant voice. And there's I think I told you this as well. There's this welcoming energy about you that I felt 100% secure in that space with you, non-judgmental space. And I think that's so important for people that are trying to dig into something because there's so much pain and fear around it. We need to have that space. So jump in anytime if you want to say anything. And then I'm going to go to the next thing, was when we actually relax, and she makes sure that you have your phone plugged in, you're not interrupted. I put a blankie on me, got in a comfortable position. And then she talks you through down into the relaxed stage, which I was surprised is fairly quick. That didn't take long.
No.
Yeah,
Less than 5.
Yeah, and less than 5 minutes it is. Because
it's about 5 minutes.
Yeah. And there's no pendulum swinging and your eyes are getting sleepy. There's none of this. It is not what you guys think that it might be through the movies. And then I don't remember exactly how you did it because I was in that very relaxed stage. I often don't remember my meditations and other things as well when I'm in that state. But I know you talked to me, brought me back to certain scenarios, and we talked about scenarios and the tears. But can I tell you guys about these tears? These tears had every chemical in my body that is healing. It was like these tears were like fresh rain. It was like a release rather than crying over pain. I don't know. Did you have that experience?
Yeah.
I love those tears. I wanted to bottle those tears and put forward because they were beautiful tears. So what did you feel with that? I'm just curious.
With your session or with mine?
Well, with yours, if you want to, I don't know.
Mine, because I was so able to dip into the pain, they felt fresh, but you're supposed to grieve. That's another thing that no one can tell you how strong it's going to be or how long it should be. You got to grieve and let it go. But the next day, I felt the absence of anything. And this was comparable to what you were saying. It's like, it feels normal. It's almost like when there's a ringing in your ear and then it stops. And it's like, oh, this non-noise is great.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that you talk about the grieving piece because that's why you're the practitioner and not me, because I'm looking at that. I'm like, yeah, there is that. Now, being someone like me who has done so much personal work and I teach it, I was maybe in a different position at that point, but I do see the grieving aspect of it. And I'm sure, like you said, it's going to be varying degrees for people because it is a letting something go.
Yes.
And there's always that grieving aspect when we let anything go, right? Yeah. Or we're just grieving the event or the thing that happened to, right? We're in a healthy way.
Yes.
Rather than repressing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to get off on a side tangent, but
please do.
Please do. Staying in grief has a benefit. We just don't see it as a benefit.
Let's talk about that. Go. That's so good.
Well, coming from an empowered state, you don't want to stay in the grieving period because that makes you a victim. But if there's a part of your subconscious mind that needs that acknowledgement that you were victimized, that's the secondary benefit in that scenario of holding on to grief too long or because it is your identity of being a victim. And once you're able to go through the healing process, the acknowledgement, invalidation in itself can wreck your life.
Yes.
When you're done,
I just,
yeah.
I
So
just wrote a note on my pad because I was going to say, go ahead.
that's so cool. But to be validated in that moment, to hear that was rough. You did the best you could, or you didn't deserve that. That might be enough to then say, you know what? I had these 2 hours to be introspective, to go back in time, to cry about it. And you're right, I didn't deserve that. But I'm ready to take the next step. And the next step is moving forward. So it does take awareness, and you should give yourself the opportunity to grieve, especially if you repress it, especially if someone told you, stop crying. You don't need to cry for that.
Go ahead.
You go your whole life thinking, I can't feel these emotions. I shouldn't feel these emotions. I'm going to squish these emotions down.
Yeah, I love this because just before you said that, I wrote outside validation. What I was meaning by that was when you said when you're invalidated, so many of us are invalidated, even with great parents, because they're just seeing it through a different lens. Or sometimes, I had some weird things happen to me. And I remember I had a cousin come into my room in the middle of the night, and thankfully nothing happened, but it was very scary. And I remember telling my mom and being so afraid that she wasn't going to believe me. She did. But just that validation was enough. I was like, okay, I remember feeling so okay at that moment because nothing did happen like that could have happened. But I was like, okay, had I not been, I know internally I would have just in way deep inside been kicking and screaming, like, why don't you love me, care about me? Whatever it would manifest into and then carry on through my life. So sometimes we are not validated. And sometimes we have people in our life to this day that are not validating our experiences. And I think it is, man, that's just so, I feel this so viscerally, that getting the opportunity to be in that space and to be validated by an outside source, but also by yourself. That validation of self because now we are now adults, damn it. And we're not at the mercy of the elders in our life anymore. And we can validate that was not okay.
Yes. And I do want to say, because you had mentioned perfect parents, a lot of people feel guilty about, like, they're going to turn on parents if they admit that their parents hurt them. Something that I learned, a concept that I learned more recently, is that remove the value of good versus bad. Just look at it as facts. It's awareness at this point. We don't need to assign blame. You don't have to worry about blame or shame anymore. Like, it's just the facts. And if it hurts, we need to heal it. And from that point, we can move forward.
I love that. I often say to my clients, because they're like, well, I don't want to talk bad about my mom or my dad. And I say, here's the deal. They're not perfect. They love the heck out of you, and you love the heck out of them. So I say, mom and dad, they'll say, okay, mom or dad did this, and I still love them. I'll say, because they'll say something else, and we still love them. And we still love them, because this is not to diss the parenting. It is really because so many well-meaning people make mistakes. We can only parent and show up in the world as well as we are healed ourselves, which is a big prompt as to why I was like, I cannot be this train wreck that I am after my tsunami. I'm like, something's got to change. And they really were my motivation, because I didn't want to bring that down to them. But some people don't even have that awareness to dip in or try to figure out what's happening within themselves so they can. So yeah, I think that is an excellent point to make. And it's a beautiful note to end on. And just so everybody knows, Natalie and I have talked about jumping on Instagram lives here and there, because we just love these conversations. We have so much fun with each other. And, I'm learning a lot through Natalie, because I am not a hypnotherapist. I know a lot of this stuff through other means, you know, the brain and the yada, yada, but it's so fun to play this back and forth. And I'm looking forward to actually even talking about other topics that may not be hypnotherapy related, just things that people might be going through. I don't know. Sky's the limit, girlfriend. But
Yeah.
I just want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I really did have a good time, and I love being able to talk about these things. I mean, it's common, you know, and
Yeah.
to be able to just explore that is great. I think it's moving the world forward.
Well, Natalie, where can everybody find you? Because I want all kinds of people to hook up with you and start following your delightfulness. So what's your Instagram handle? Would you have a website? You know, where can they find you?
Yes, thank you. So I'm at Girl You're Worthy on Instagram, and it's tricky. So it's GIRL dot U as in the alphabet, R as in the single letter of the alphabet, dot worthy. And when it comes to my website, it's the same thing, except no dots. Girlyourworthy.co. Believe it or not, there's someone else who has girlyourworthy.com. So I beat her without the .co.
Yep. Yep. The KristenBrown.com was taken. I had to do KristenBrown.org. And then KristenBrown.com reached out to me and wanted me to pay $1,800 to have the, I'm like, I will be .org. Thank you.
Right.
You can also find her through my page too. Well, maybe I share your stuff too. Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for being here, Miss Natalie. I am beyond blessed. I loved this conversation. I love bringing information to the world. And I just think you're the perfect person for this role that you are in. And thank you for answering the calling and being one of my healing coaches, because that was miraculous and beautiful. And I loved every single second of it.
Thank you so much for the work that you do. I really appreciate you. I bless the day that our paths crossed.
Seriously. Thank you, hon.